Manga really isn't that valuable. I know. I'm the guy that couple videos back I showed you how Made in Abyss, the first four have literally um, gone up by a factor of 10 from their cover price. Um, so all of a sudden it's like they went from $17 to like 175, 200. That's a huge price jump because all of a sudden it went out of print, out of stock, and into the collectibles market. But here's the thing. That kind of action in the comics world isn't anything new. It's like, I'll give you an example. 8 Billion Genies from Image Comics last year. I'll put up some eBay listings and you'll see, yeah, that thing for like, I think it was a $5 comic. Yeah, that's quite a price increase. Now, don't forget, there is, okay, CGC, yeah, that adds some money there, but you have like store-specific copies, you have variants, you have signatures, you have the whole thing has gotten very complicated, and comics are all about the collector. So you need more proof? Okay, this one hurts my soul. I'm going to put up, it's a historical work of manga, and so let's have a peeky here. This is Osamu Tezuka, who is the godfather of manga. It's a first printing of volume 2 of his series Tetsuwan Atom, or Astro Boy as we know it here in the West, from 1957. Now this is a historic book. It's something so revered it has to be handled with white gloves. And what's it listed at? $400 US. That's the same price as a 1/4 scale Makima anime figure in a bunny suit. So let's look at a different one from 1957. This is DC Showcase number 8, also in very rough shape. It features the first appearance of a second-tier villain, Captain Cold, priced at $1,200 US. So as you can see, the market for collectible comics is more expensive than manga. Let's add a little insult to injury, shall we? Here's a San Diego Comic-Con silver foil edition of a Sailor Moon comic, which sold ungraded on eBay for $1,750 last month. Do you think there's ever a Sailor Moon manga that has ever sold for $1,750? Ever? You could actually buy 3 sets of the complete Sailor Moon manga for that price. The most expensive single volume of a manga I could find is the shiny gold edition of One Piece Romance Dawn Volume 1 by the prolific Ichiro Oda, which sold for around $5,000 in pristine condition. Now that's pretty expensive. Do you know what the most expensive comic book that I could find that's ever sold? And that would be Superman #1 in CGC 8, went for $5.3 million. So, little difference there. Why is manga so cheap? I mean, does nobody care about these old books? Or are 1/4 scale bunny girl figures really the way to go forward here? For an old guy like me, the current manga values are kind of interesting because I go back to when I was a kid reading comics in the 70s, and it's very similar. Like, manga has a ton of different genres, but so did comics back in the day. Like, we had, well, of course, the big one was, of course, like superheroes. But, you know, there was still the funny books, like we had Disney books, we had real horror, maybe not as a comic, but as a magazine. That's creepy. You know, you had some mystery, magical titles like Doctor Strange. We had jungle comics, for crying out loud. I read a lot of westerns when I was a kid. I loved the westerns. We had gothic romance titles. We had just old romance titles. We had fantasy titles. And just, there was a lot of variety. It catered to a lot of different tastes, much like manga does today. You have all those genres I just showed you. you can go out today and purchase a manga in any of those ones. The other thing is, like, there is no such thing as slabbed comics, and I'll grab a slabbed comic for you here. Like, this is my Catwoman number 48, CGC 9.8. Beautiful Adam Hughes cover. What's the story about? I have no idea. Never read it, never will. Again, this is the problem today. Just bought it for the cover. Well, for the artist, actually. So, what happened? Where did we go? What's going on? I've kind of narrowed it down to 4 things. First one was those really big budget superhero movies, specifically Superman 1978. That one just legitimized superheroes. It was a cultural zeitgeist sort of thing when all of a sudden, you know, what was in the comics could go to a movie screen. Now, you can argue the special effects aren't as great as they would be today, but, you know, they were really good for the time. The other one, the next one was Batman 1989. That one just really put comics into the mainstream. And then through the 80s, they've been building a good following. So anyway, we've got to the point of we have these really big budget movies that kind of brought superheroes into normalcy, let's say. Number 2, we've got, you know, the invention of the bag and the board. Number 3 is price guides. So you have a reference point. So if I'm buying a used comic, a dealer roughly knows how much to charge for it, right? Based on previous sales. What was number 4 that's, you know, in my lifetime, that's kind of, this one's driven comic prices through the stratosphere, and it's basically CGC. I would also say CBCS, but that was founded in 2015. It's this guy right here, CGC. So once you start slabbing comics, like, that's the grade. That's a 9.8. That you can't go and dicker about, no, I think there's a micro tear here on the corner. No, it's just, that is the grade. And once there's a grade, so there may be, like, let's say 1,000 copies of a comic that exist. It's rare. If there's only one 9.8, like, all of a sudden, that's a rare comic. That's a unique comic. And it's priced accordingly. So you can look at the census on CGC and determine, oh, there's 4 9.8s in existence. So all of a sudden, what used to be a comic where, you know, you had 3,500 known in existence or whatever, now there's 1, because it's the only 9.8 in existence. So all those values go through the roof. So this is the big thing. Like, I'll give you a story. Like, I bought, before CGC took effect, this is Batman 232. That's about a 9.0. I bought that in the early 2000s for like $45. That's now a $1,000 comic. And you can argue, yeah, it's inflation. No, it's not just inflation. With inflation, that would be maybe a $200 comic. What it is these things, right? They've turned it into a collector's market. So all of a sudden, it's like you're buying the grade. Like, you're buying the comic, but really, it's the grade that matters. That's the one that determines the multiples. Manga doesn't have that. So that's probably a big reason why it's still so cheap. That's my opinion. So anyway, will manga be able to eventually get into these things? Let's talk about it. So I do have 2 other points I want to make, but I also want to keep this video shorter. So this was Divine Revelation number 1. Manga right now is cheap. Compared to comics, it's cheap. Number 2, which I'll put out hopefully tomorrow, maybe later on, is comics are oversized baseball cards. So anyway, I hope you look forward to that, and thanks so much for watching this one, and we'll discuss more later.